Are you curious about stepping into the world of tube amplifiers, but feeling a little nervous about making the jump? Or are you someone who loves tube amplifiers and is looking for a fun new option to add to your growing collection? Well, today I'm here to give you 3 reasons why the new Gremlin hybrid tube amplifier might be the best place for you to start your tube journey or add to your growing collection. My name is Aaron, and by the end of this video, you'll see why the Gremlin is an appealing choice, not only for its unique design and first-class tubes, but most importantly, the scary good sound it produces at an incredibly low price. Let's dive in and I'll explain why we shouldn't judge this ugly little amp solely by its looks. The first reason I'm excited about the Gremlin is simply because of its low price at just $120, which includes a set of stock tubes, something I'll talk more about later. Let's be honest, tube amplifiers can be a little intimidating to buy, especially when choosing between hybrid and OTL models, and then add in the confusion of buying tubes, hoping they are good quality and properly matched. The Gremlin's low price makes it easy for anyone who has been a little scared of jumping into the tube world, and allows them to wade into the waters with the Gremlin and realize tubes are not as scary as they might look. Sure, there are other hybrid tube amps like this one near the same price range, but they may not bring the same reliable tubes as the Gremlin, something I will talk about later. So for just $120, you're getting a Class A fully balanced tube amp with matched tubes, something unheard of at this price, that provides 1250 milliwatts of output power at 32 ohms and can power headphones between 8 and 600 ohms. So how is the Gremlin able to be sold at such a low price? Well, Apos and Ray Tubes went out of their way to design this amp to meet a specific price point and decided to sacrifice costly design options like a chassis or adding multiple inputs and outputs. That's right, the Gremlin is a 100% balanced amplifier, which means there are no single-ended inputs or outputs available, as this design saves money in manufacturing, which is then passed along to the end consumer. Now, even though they made some design sacrifices, this is not a boring looking amplifier. For instance, there is an option to move this little jumper here, and the Gremlin will shine a fun green light underneath to give it a special spooky feeling. Now, if that feeling is a little too spooky for you, just move the jumper back and the light will turn itself off. Now, because there is no chassis, you get to be a lot more hands-on with tube rolling, giving this amp a little bit of a kit feel to it. I mean, let's be honest. It looks like something you would build with a kit, so why not let us get our hands dirty a little when rolling tubes? Simply remove these 4 nuts and the top comes off, giving you easy access to roll the tubes, which might be something you want to strongly consider. Again, something I'll talk more about when discussing the sound. The price of the Gremlin does increase when you upgrade the tubes, so let's talk about the importance of those tubes next. Apos Audio loaned me the Gremlin for review, and they designed this amplifier hand in hand with a new company called Ray Tubes. Apos suggested that I talk with Nelson Wu, the owner of Ray Tubes, and naturally, I was a little skeptical that I was going to get a call of nothing but sales talk. I know, I should be less pessimistic about these things, but let's remember, they called this amp the Gremlin, and I've been thinking of this guy since 1986. Nelson and I spoke for an hour, and I never felt like I was getting a sales pitch, as much as having a friendly discussion with a like-minded audio enthusiast who, after spending 15 years dabbling with headphones, DACs, and amps, feels that tube interest is declining, which has to do with the general confusion and distrust that comes with consumers buying tubes online. Sure, we can all find NOS tubes online, but how do we know we are buying quality tubes that are paired properly together? And what happens when they stop working sooner than we expected? So Nelson started his company Ray Tubes and works directly with factories overseas to provide the best tubes possible. How do they do this? Well, Nelson reminded me that most tubes these days are not used for audio, but rather medical and aerospace use. Factories want to produce as many tubes as possible for these industries, and the audio resellers we are familiar with simply buy large quantities direct from the factories, burn them in a little, and then charge more to the consumer once they know the tubes work. However, they aren't always invested in further pairing these tubes together to make sure they are really selling you the best pair possible. Ray Tubes has worked it out with the factories to where they're able to have a small space on site. And Nelson's sound engineers go through these massive quantities of tubes and hand pick their selections and then put them through rigorous testing where they test each tube for their voltage, current, and sound signature standards. Now, Nelson said this was similar to picking apples, where his team may pick 100 apples and only get to keep 3 or 4 out of that large batch. Once they find those best performers, they will begin pairing them together for the best sound staging and channel balance for the consumer. Now, this is very important. Ray Tubes offers a 1-year warranty against manufacturing defects. Their tubes need 6 hours of burn-in, and well cared for tubes can last up to 10,000 hours. Now, I can't say with 100% certainty that other companies selling tubes don't have a similar warranty, but I know you won't get that when buying a pair of new old stock tubes off eBay. Like I said before, it would be fair for you to say that I'm simply repeating Nelson's sales pitch back to you. But I think it's worth pointing out that Nelson really came across to me as more of an enthusiast for tubes more than anything else, and is simply looking to provide a solution to people who are interested in buying quality hand-picked tubes that offer a great warranty. And look, the guy's putting his money where his mouth is by creating the small business here in the US to back up his passion, and I can't fault for anyone having that kind of drive in this audio hobby. Now back to the Gremlin. The $120 price point includes matched core 12AU7 tubes from Ray Tubes, which again to me is an incredible overall value. If you want to upgrade to the select 12AU7s from Ray Tubes, the listed price includes the Gremlin at $299, but it appears Apos has currently marked it down to $270. I'll explain more about the sound difference between the tubes in just a few minutes. Now, if you're a tube aficionado and you have some new old stock tubes on hand that you think might sound better than Ray Tubes, you're in luck because the Gremlin also works with any 12AU7 or 6922 tubes, new or old, allowing you to easily swap and try new types. Just move this jumper here to change to the 6922 option. For listening tests, I paired the Gremlin with my SMSL DO200 Pro DAC and used my AT70X refined headphones, which are 470 ohms. Anyone familiar with the sound signature of hybrid tube amps will be happy to know that the Gremlin will bring that same detail, soundstage, and channel separation common with hybrids. These type of amps always do a great job of keeping the treble in check so sounds never get too bright. The Gremlin and the R70X Refined were a perfect fit in terms of presenting a great sounding mid-range, and we know tube amps like the Gremlin present bass in a more musical tone rather than just a beating thump. I first listened to the song Juan's World from the new album Mid-Spiral by Bad Bad Not Good. The song starts with a flute solo that bounces back and forth between the right and left headphones easily, with excellent imaging. Later in the song, the flute has another solo with some extra reverb that just hangs in the air enough to give you that spacious feel. I next listened to Dominique's Fees M.A.'s song Birds from her Nameless album. This song is a very forward vocal performance with a thick acoustic bass playing along with some percussion licks that hang in the air naturally. The Gremlin didn't lose any of that interesting spacious performance and handled the musicality of the bass easily. So is there a sound difference between the core and select tubes? Yes. When listening to Birds with both sets of tubes, the select definitely has a wider soundstage and darker background. There's also this strange percussion sound effect during the song that's way in the background. And when listening to the core tubes, I could just barely hear that. But with the select tubes, it became much more present and easier to identify in a good way. Basically, take everything that sounds good with the core tube and you will hear it elevate to the next level when you upgrade to the select. So right now you're probably saying to yourself, just skip the Gremlin and go with X Duo, which is a valid argument given their great prices. Now, I don't have an X Duo amp on hand to do a proper side-by-side comparison, but the one thing I remembered from reviewing the MH02 is that whenever I would tap or bump the amp, which is a common thing to happen when it's on your desktop, I would get microphonic ringing coming through the cheap tubes that were being used. What I've noticed with the Gremlin is that if I've tapped it, I don't get that ringing. And it could be because of the higher quality, properly matched tubes that's being provided from Apos and Ray Tubes. So that's something to consider when you're trying to choose between the Gremlin and the X Duo. You might get the X Duo at a cheaper price, and then you might find that you want to upgrade because the tubes aren't the quality you were hoping for. Whereas you might spend a little bit more on the Gremlin, but the stock tubes that come with it are going to perform better than the stock tubes with the X Duo. And when you upgrade to the Select, you're going to get a sound performance that's very hard to beat from X Duo or other manufacturers. Here are the two groups of people that I think would benefit from buying the Gremlin. First, if you've never owned a hybrid tube amp and you've been scared away by spending money and buying tubes, the Gremlin makes it easy to get in the game at just $120. And you can be confident you are getting quality Ray audio tubes at that price, which you can upgrade over time to further enhance the sound if you choose. Second, if you love tube audio and are like me and like to collect audio gear, adding the Gremlin to your stash is a fun option. Again, the low price makes it easy to jump on, and there's a good chance you already have a stash of tubes lying around to roll in the Gremlin. Most importantly, you now know about Ray Tubes and where to find quality matched tubes, which might be an important resource for you later on down the road. Now, earlier in this video, I mentioned I was listening to the Gremlin amp with my Audio-Technica R70X refined headphones. A pair of headphones that I loved so much while reviewing that I bought myself a pair. If you'd be interested in learning more about those headphones, you can do so by watching this video here.